Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. France is going to deploy some of the forces in Odessa. At least this information was spread around internet today. First of all, we have this article from Le Monde. Sometimes they share quite reliable information. Let's read this article in English. Emmanuel Macron's metamorphosis from dove to hawk. Metamorphosis, I hope I spell it correctly. So what they say in this article, that there was some sort of the close meeting somewhere in France, and Macron with a glass of wine said that in any case in the coming year I'm going to have to send our guys to Odessa. It looks like the meeting was dedicated to American heroes of the Second World War. So this was the original article which spread this information, and later on many of the news platforms continue to spread it in the social media. However, my friends, it doesn't mean that France is ready to send their forces to Odessa, but it also means that they are looking for such a possibility. And today President of France gave the big interview to clarify the message of how he sees the support of Ukraine in the future. You may check this interview yourself, but I'll tell you the most important things that Macron said. Here he told no any words about deployment of the French forces into Odessa city. But Macron said that France doesn't exclude sending forces to Ukraine. From what I understood, translate in the text, Macron said that he doesn't want Russia to put the red lines for France and basically for allies. He says that we have a goal: Russia shouldn't win this war. The war itself is the existential crisis for Europe. To bring peace to Ukraine, we shouldn't be weak. Ukrainians are brave, but they also have their own limits. He also told that France does its best to produce more ammunition for Ukraine, also more weaponry like Caesar artillery systems. What is most important from this interview, as for me, that President Macron said that without recognition of Ukrainian sovereign borders, it's impossible to bring peace in a long-term perspective. So President Macron and France in general, as the representative of the democratic world, says to Russia that no, you will not win until Ukraine gets all of its territories back, including Crimea, by the way. Emmanuel Macron confirmed that he spoke with Putin for hundreds of hours in 2022 before the war. He tried to explain to Putin that it's very bad to start the war in Ukraine. Nevertheless, Putin started it. There were some of the conversations after, but later on Macron just stopped calling to Putin. He says that there is no sense to speak with him. Mostly after the war had started, Macron spoke about the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant security. Macron also called Putin a dictator, together with all of the Kremlin group, and they decided to be a destabilization force in Europe, and probably not also in Europe. He said that not providing enough support for Ukraine means the way for disaster, for defeat. So lately Macron just opened his eyes on the picture in general, or probably he already knew it before, but now the situation on the front lines after Ukraine lost Avdiivka and started to lose lots of the military equipment, plus after the failure of the summer counteroffensive of Ukraine, he just opened his cards that France is ready to support Ukraine and there will be no any red lines. I think that it really influences Russia, Putin's regime in general. They went crazy about Macron recently. All of their propaganda media is just mocking the French leader. But France did what it did. It shows openly that we are ready to fight even for Ukraine at some point. Yes, they are not deploying the forces in Ukraine, but we need Putin to understand that potentially France at least, and plus some of the other countries, are ready to go all in like Putin does. The Ukrainian side says that it doesn't need NATO soldiers to be in Ukrainian territory, but the Ukrainian army needs military equipment, ammunition and other stuff. I'm sure that if France got some of the Taurus cruise missiles, they would supply those to Ukraine. You may say, why don't they supply, for example, Leclerc tank to Ukrainian army? But for now, it's more important to have a long-range missiles and other long-range stuff compared to the tanks. As you see, tanks are less effective on the front lines as it was before. So Leclerc in a current environment wouldn't help that much. We see it after the losses of the Leopard 2 tanks, also Abrams tanks, and at least one Challenger 2 was lost as well. Maybe modern French tanks will be needed for the next wave of the counteroffensive of Ukraine, but I do not expect it to happen this year. Maybe if everything goes well, we're gonna see it in 2025. By the way, Emmanuel Macron starts to clarify some of the messages that he spoke in his interview, replying on the questions from audience on Instagram and also on X. Kind of interesting communication with people. Meanwhile, there are some of the political games in Germany. Bundestag again refused the initiative to send Taurus cruise missiles to Ukraine. It's kind of strange because before they voted to supply the long-range missiles to Ukraine, but if they see name Taurus in the bill, they failed the voting, as well as Chancellor Scholz. Well, that bill was presented by the German opposition, maybe that is why it was not voted for again. Meanwhile, Macron pushes Scholz to supply those Taurus missiles to Ukraine. As you can see here, on Ukraine, France and Germany can't agree to speak with one voice. Emmanuel knows that Taurus are crucial to cut the main Kerch supply connection. With just French Scalp or British Storm Shadow, it's impossible to achieve. So again, about Macron, you'll see lots of the disinformation in internet. Like for example, this one saying that French sends the 2nd Regiment of the forces to Romania and later on they will be deployed in Odessa. Some sort of the France News 24. By the way, the source has already deleted the information, because it is fake. But if really Macron spoke about Odessa city, it means that they had some of the information that Russia is planning some sort of the assault landing operation in the place. Honestly, I think that it is impossible to land the Russian forces successfully in Odessa city or near to Odessa. Mostly all of their big landing ships have already been converted into submarines. And to land the infantry and armored vehicles with submarines, no, it has never happened before. So as for me, the chances for this successful landing operation for Russia are not small, they are zero. But it is my own incompetent opinion based on the facts that we know about the Russian army. Even at the very beginning of the war, they didn't manage to land their forces in Odessa. They went close to Odessa, but one of their ships was captured by the MLRS system of Ukraine. So their main goal was to go through Kherson to Mykolaiv and then going down to Odessa to bypass all of those war obstacles. But they were also captured on the way. And now with the current Russian Black Sea Marine fleet, which is unable to achieve any sort of the missions rather than strike Ukrainian cities with the caliber cruise missiles, no, they're not capable. Also, Ukraine might use aviation in this area because it's quite far away from the Russian air defense. But still we have the information that France is going to deploy the forces in Odessa. This information was unofficially stated by Macron according to some of the sources, which are without any names, and the information about it was published by Le Monde source. That's it. Maybe Macron was speaking about instructors or something like that. Looks like we have the latest update from the deep state military map. Russia advanced a little near to Pavlivka. Yesterday and today they've took a couple of the fields in the area. Also, the source says that the fight continues near to Verboa. Yesterday and today, the gray area expansion in the sector. Das ist nicht gut, because Russia attacks from this side and also they try to get to Robotyne. I think that finally Russia will be able to occupy Robotyne in the coming weeks. Also, they will get at least this part under their control. They advance simultaneously from two of the directions, so for Ukraine it's better to get the forces out already. Obviously, if Russia will reach this spot of the gray zone. My consensus reconfirms this update, so Russia was successful near to Robotyne, and all of their vehicles, however, were just demolished. All of them were burning, so it's kind of the strange success. It already happened at least 2 of the times, then Russian forces went to Robotyne and were totally demolished. Hopefully it will be like that in this case as well, but here they were definitely successful. The risk for Ukrainian group in the place is confirmed. The gray area also moved a little in Avdiivka direction near to Stepova, so it was yesterday, it is today right now, so the fights reached the war obstacle in a place. As I told you well before, Russia will occupy all of its territories during this spring campaign. because basically there is the river going like that. Are they going to break the Ukrainian defense? Well, it's the big question. I think that they will not do it for the next few months. But without the proper military support of Ukraine, this attack is almost imminent. Now let's go to some of the positive news. The Russian opposition forces, I call them like that, liberated some of the territories near to Spodorushna village, the Russian Federation. They also have one more attack vector, kaputting some of the Russian BTRs. According to some of the information, Russian opposition forces were able to establish the control over the part of the Kozinka village in Belgorod Oblast. It is a new wave of the attack of the Russian opposition towards the Russian Federation and fight against the Russian regular army. Also, the source says that there was the landing operation, small-scale landing operation, using Ukrainian helicopters. It occurred near to town of Kozinka as well. By the way, my friends, I got those news during the early morning time and I published those on my Telegram channel. That's why I highly recommend you to subscribe for my Telegram to be updated on the situation around Ukraine. So I share there a unique content that I'm sometimes not publishing on YouTube or just unable to publish it here because of the censorship. There was also a drone strike launched on Belgorod simultaneously with a new wave of the opposition forces attack. There are queues at the gas stations and people are going out from their villages near to the border of Ukraine. This video from the Russian Sochi airport was spread today around internet. It is not a kaboom, it is the firefighting procedure training. Fire drills, let's say. Yeah, sometimes it might look like that, kind of scary, but it's just a training. I saw the similar picture in Borispol airport of Kiev 2 times. Alright, probably as the counteract to Emmanuel Macron's speech and all of his attitude to Russia, a Russian former President Dmitry Medvedev and also the Council of the Russian Security has presented a Russian formula of peace. Let's check out those statements. Just from the first one we see a total cringe from Dmitry Medvedev. Recognition by former Ukraine of defeat in a military component of the conflict. The complete and unconditional surrender of the former Ukraine. Is it a peace plan? Demilitarization of Ukraine and ban of the creation of paramilitary groups on its territories in the future. I don't know if I even should read the other stuff that this sick person says or writes about a Nazi character of the former Kiev political regime. So he says former Ukraine, former Kiev political regime. For them, Ukraine shouldn't exist. It's their goal. Russia is not willing to stop, but some of our allies seems to be blind about it. Just few of them understand that it's better to support Ukraine to avoid the global war. Otherwise, Ukraine will be a part of Russia and later on Ukrainians will fight against NATO or other countries. Here Dmitry Medvedev says about it, the official recognition by Provisional Parliament of the former Ukraine that its entire territory is the territory of Russian Federation. They do not need Crimea, they do not need Donbass, they need all of Ukraine. That's their goal. They will never stop. If we would not cause them to stop. It's like 2 + 2. You let Russia win or you support Ukraine. They want United Nations to recognize the act of reunification, so Ukraine with Russia, to be a former Soviet Union. That's the main goal of the Russian president till 2030. For his next 6 years, after he obviously gets elected, he wants to rise the Soviet Union from that. It is also very simple to understand. That is why Macron will never understand what Russian leader says, because Russian leader is sick dictator. And this one is even more sick. Actually, if we speak about power, this guy is the second one in Russia, because he is a Security Council. And what Medvedev says openly, Putin thinks. Medvedev is the way of Putin to communicate with public, with the words that he doesn't want to speak personally. But I'm sure that it will never happen. This peace plan is nonsense circus. Russian formula of peace. That is what they need. They need to negotiate about peace on those demands. Please surrender, cancel your country, and there will be a peace. Ukrainian journalists confirmed that Ukraine lost at least 2 of the launchers of the Patriot system, together with 9 operators of those. It is a severe loss for Ukraine. A Patriot system was ambushed 50 kilometers away from the front lines. Somehow Russians knew of the exact location of this convoy of Patriots. I'm almost sure that there is a rat in Ukrainian military command. For Russian army it is just impossible to act that fast. They sent a surveillance drone to specific place and they were ready to launch their ballistic missiles Iskanders. 3 of them targeted Patriots. What is bad that there is no external communication from the Ukrainian military command. They didn't even say that they lost the Patriot systems. But we have the evidence of it. I already showed it on my channel. Also to start the open investigation about the case of how Russians found out the location not just of Patriot but also the helicopters which they ambushed, the HIMARS system. Our media are mostly silent about it. No one says about that stuff. They all say, hooray, some of the Russian opposition forces attacked the Russian territory. But we also need to focus on our own issues. Issues of the security of our very critical equipment and our army personnel even behind the front lines. Plus, we know that 9 soldiers lost their lives. Every life is very important for Ukraine, but here were professionals who were trained in the West to operate those systems. It is even a heavier loss compared to those launchers. Iron, you can get iron from the Western allies after some point, after negotiations, but replacing the soldiers, no, it's not that easy, and you cannot replace the life loss. Every specialist in Ukrainian army is very, very important. In many of the cases, much more important than the iron that he or she operates. Alright, my friends, probably you know what to do now. You need to press your huge like to this video. By doing so, you help me a lot. Also, just if you want to support my channel, please check out some of the links in the video description just below. You may support me on Patreon or just on a sponsorship of my YouTube channel. Guys, thank you so much for your kind support. I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are and have a great time.